There is a massive update on the Mubama situation. Of course, the striker refused to sign a new contract for West Ham. We offered him a new contract. He didn't want to sign it. It wasn't exactly a money issue, I don't think, but it was more along the lines of, will I get playing time? Will you actually help me further my career? And I do think the money was a tiny bit of an issue as well, but I think the main issue was the fact that he's not getting played. Danny Ings is on the bench, Antonio's starting matches, Jarrod Bowen as well has now been moved to that centre forward role. And Mubama can't even get on the bench at the moment for West Ham. So obviously he's quite frustrated with the situation, and the fact that there's contract issues and he's not being even put on the bench, to me insinuates that David Moyes has no interest in keeping him, and the two parties will do what every other single academy player has really done, bar Rice and Ben Johnson, and just sort of say, well, you want to be played every week, I don't want to play you every week. So it just seems like we're never going to come to an agreement. But obviously, David Moyes rates the youngster quite a lot, because we know at the start of the season he said that Mubama was going to be part of his plans, that he was going to be maybe like a rotational player and he would get a chance at some point this season. We haven't really seen that at all, but he refused to take him on loan. We've seen that other players have gone on loan this season to try and help their careers. Obviously, Freddie Potts being one who's done really, really well at Wickham. Kamara Sawyer. There's quite a few that have gone on loan this season, but quite a few clubs came in for Mubama, and David Moyes refused to allow him to go on loan. He didn't want him to go on loan. He said that he wanted him to be a part of the team this season. And of course, we haven't seen that yet. But a very interesting message from David Moyes that I read recently, and it read this. David Moyes has urged Divin Mubama to commit his future to West Ham, warning the striker not to repeat the big mistakes of other young players who have walked away from the club. A lot of young players are getting impatient. The best thing is to sign a contract at West Ham. And I actually think that's quite interesting, to be fair, because it's not really something I've looked at. I think that maybe we're sort of victim of this, that when a new player comes in, we instantly think, well, give him a shot, give him a chance. Why not? Give us some fresh ideas. When in actuality, Mubama is, I think, maybe like 19, 20, possibly 21. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, let's say he's 21, which I'm pretty sure he's not. I'm pretty sure he's like 19. Even if he stayed at West Ham for the next like 3 years, if he bided his time in the West Ham academy, playing for our under 21s, playing in the first team for us, maybe getting a couple of loan moves, but if you want to keep him in the squad, then playing a couple of cup games and playing every now and then. If he was able to establish himself as a starter in the next 3 years, he'd only be 23. You'd be a 23-year-old playing Premier League football, which, to be honest, is very, very good. Let's be honest. Like, there's very few people who can do that, play football at 23 years old at a Premier League level. So, when David Moyes says that, I actually kind of think to myself, maybe he's right, because, Sonny Perkins, who thought that he should be starting for West Ham week in, week out, went over to Leeds. He can't even get in the Championship Leeds side. Harrison Ashby wanted more game time. We couldn't give it to him. He went over to Newcastle. They've got Trippier, and then they've signed Livramento. So it's pretty clear that he's not really in their plans either. Grady Diangana, probably our best example of a deal gone wrong, I guess, in our eyes. Obviously, went to West Brom and absolutely smashed it in the Premier League for them. Then got relegated and then kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. But had he stayed at West Ham, I think he actually would have done quite well. So I think that was our one mistake. Josh Cullen obviously left. Now at Burnley, relegation team. Is he, has he proved himself at Premier League levels? Not entirely sure. Afolayan went to Bolton, scored a couple of goals for Bolton, and hasn't really done much since. He's not returned. I mean, there's, Ngakia as well, still at Watford, I do believe. There's very few players that have left West Ham and gone on to do great things, or at least even just go on to be a Premier League player. I wouldn't say we've actually regretted any of the players that we've lost. Now, the thing for me is, had they have stayed at West Ham, would they have had a better career than they are having right now at a different club? And that's where I sort of think, yes. That's why I think Harrison Ashby, if he was playing at right back for West Ham right now, week in, week out, I actually think that would be brilliant. And if he was playing for Newcastle week in, week out, I think we would probably regret selling him. Same with Diangana in my eyes as well. There's quite a few examples of players that we've let go that I think probably would do okay here. But, look at Ben Johnson, stayed at West Ham, got his breakthrough chance, established himself with the first team. Now, maybe not so much. Obviously, of course, the shining example will be Declan Rice as well. But I think the issue is that, like I say, we're so impatient to see these young players perform and do what they can, because there is such a unique connection between an academy player and a West Ham and a football fan. You know, you want to see an academy player do well. I think it's because instantly you know they're loyal. There's instantly an affiliation and a connection there to a academy player, because they've gone up through the ranks. You know, they've not come for money. You feel like they deserve the chance to prove themselves at the club. And Mubama certainly deserves that chance. And David Moyes seems keen to give it to him. He just wants Mubama to be patient. The thing that I don't understand is, why would you say publicly Mubama's going to play this season? I don't want to sell him. I don't want to get him on a loan deal. I want to play him. And then we're 18, 19 games in the season, if you count all the competitions and stuff we played. And I don't think he's really started many games. I think, Danny Ings gets the nod on him most of the time. I don't actually think, I can double check it here just to make sure I'm not talking absolute waffle. But as far as I'm aware, I don't think he's really played any minutes for West Ham this season. And, considering at the start of the season, he was told that he was going to be, we don't want to sell you. We don't want to sell you. We want to play you in games. And this season, he has made 0 appearances for the West Ham first team in normal competitions. He's played for the West Ham under-21s. He made 3 appearances in the 22-23 season. He is 19 years of age, by the way. And yeah, he hasn't started for West Ham. He's played an EFL Cup game this season, and that's it. Just 1 EFL Cup. So essentially he's played like 1 game, and we've played, probably about 20 odd games this season so far, I reckon. That's not really what we promised him. That's not what Moyes said would happen. So I can understand his frustration, but I don't know. There's two sides we can look at it from. That's the issue. I could look at it from the side of Mubama, which obviously, you told me not to go on a loan move. You told me you didn't want to sell me. Now I can't even get ahead of Danny Ings or Antonio when we're out of form. You'd rather play a right winger at striker than give me a chance. And then David Moyes is also thinking, listen, mate, you're 19 years old. Slow down a bit. You've got time. You're not at the end of your career. You're 19 years of age. Even if you spent the next year, 2 years being on the sidelines at West Ham, you'd be playing Premier League football at 21 years of age, which again is very, very good. So I can see it from both sides. But as a West Ham fan, all I want is this issue to be resolved. I want him to sign a new contract, and hopefully, having seen what's happened to ex-players in the past, Mubama will think to himself, do you know what? Maybe I want to break the curve. Maybe I want to actually give West Ham a proper go. And supposedly the same thing that happened during the Bowen deal was going to happen for this deal, in that David Moyes is not going to be a part of the conversation, and it's going to be Sullivan and Steiden who actually sit down with Mubama and talk terms. I actually think that might be a little bit damaging, because David Moyes needs to actually promise him, I'm going to play you X amount of games. Here's my plan for you in the next few years. I'm going to play you in this amount of trophies this year, give you this amount of game time. The next year, if you perform well, I'm willing to give you a place on the bench. I don't need to buy a new striker. You're going to be my new striker. X amount of games. If you do really well there, I'm going to start you next season. That's my 3-year plan for you. And like I say, 3-year plan, you'd be 22 years old playing in the Premier League. So I do think it's kind of damaging not to have Moyes a part of these conversations, because if they make promises that Moyes won't deliver on, it's just going to get us back to square one again. But, it worked for the Bowen deal, and it might work for this one. So obviously, to summarise, Divin Mubama rejected a contract from West Ham United. We are now in negotiations for a new deal with him, in which Steiden and Sullivan will be incredibly involved in. David Moyes is not thought to be a part of that actual conversation. I'm sure that he will get his thoughts fed back to that, though. And David Moyes has publicly come out and urged Mubama to stay at the club, and that the best thing he can do for his career right now is to sign a contract at West Ham.